Thank you. Sorry, I've been in the business, food and beverage, for 35 years, so I got my glasses. They're going to be up and down. But anyway, just as a quick intro, I'm so excited to be doing this panel with this group here because I've been in the food and beverage business for 35 years, as I said. I started the 15 group 25 years ago. And we are Canada's leading food and beverage consulting company. And I've been going to hotel conferences for, forever. And rarely do I get to see or is there food and beverage engagement at the conferences, which to me is crazy because there's so much food and beverage in hotels. And I'm excited because I think this session and what we're seeing is a real trend to more dedication to food and beverage in the hotel industry, and it's a couple of reasons. And from our perspective, like we've been around 25 years, 10 years ago, probably 5% of our work was in hotels, and I would say now it's probably 25 to 30% of our work is with hotel groups. I think I've got 8 or 9 hotel projects on the go as we speak. But I think it's because there's a real shift to the thinking around food and beverage in the hotel world. First off, hoteliers are realizing that you can actually make money in food and beverage, which never was thought of before. Or in some cases, you may not be able to make money, but you can actually lose a lot less than you have been. But the other thing that's happening now is food and beverage is such an important part of the hotel experience. And people, unlike 20 years ago or 10 years ago, people aren't booking hotel rooms just to have a place to lay their head. They want an experience, and people are now booking based on all the amenities, but one of the main ones is food and beverage. So I think hotels are kind of thinking, how do we loop food and beverage into the overall experience to make it part of the engagement, part of how we book rooms, and part of how we can charge great room rates as well. So anyway, excited to be part of this. I'm gonna introduce our group here, which I'm really excited to be chatting with as well. So we've got Chris Baddeley, who's Senior VP at Accent Inns and Hotel Z. We've got Will Liu, who's Director of Food and Beverage at Pacific Reach. And we've got Michael Kuzyk, who's President of Category 12 Brewing, because we're going to talk a bit about the beverage side as well. Maybe each of you, I just introduced you, but maybe each of you could just quickly do a quick intro, what your background is, what your food and beverage involvement is in the hotel space. Yeah.
Hey, hi everybody. My name's Will Liu. I work for Pacific Reach. We have a wide portfolio from Hotel Georgia back there, all the way to Ritz-Carlton in Toronto, Hilton, Sheraton, Radisson, Hyatt's, all that. My job is to create new concepts to go into all the hotels or help support improving them. On top of that, put new F&B outlets into all our properties. So reimagining F&B in a way that's creative, purposeful, mission forward, but also engaging.
Awesome. Chris?
Yeah, thanks, David. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. My name's Chris Baddeley. I'm Senior VP over at Accent Inns and Hotel Z. I've been in F&B all my life, as you can probably tell by my Aussie/British/Kiwi accent. I've done some traveling, which has been awesome for me in F&B. Got to Canada in 2015 and, like a lot of us Brits do, moved straight to Whistler for some skiing. Worked in the hospitality sector up there, made the switch over to hotels in 2022. And currently I'm overseeing all the operational side of our 2 brands, which includes our F&B offerings, and we also have some leased spaces for some operators. So yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. And Michael?
Yeah, thanks, David. 12 years ago, we opened Category 12 Brewing and designed it as a wholesale brewery, but with a very changing market and wanting to appeal to a broad demographic, we instituted a food program and added a bistro component to our brewery in 2019. And we've been dabbling in different product market channels for the last 3 years as well, just to try and improve and increase the appeal of our craft.
Fantastic. Great group of people. Yeah, I'm sure we're going to get a ton of insights here. I'm going to start off with a question, probably mostly for Chris and Will. And don't go into this in too much depth just because it could take 40 minutes alone. But what do you see as the biggest challenge today with food and beverage in the hotel space?
Want me to take that one first?
Or biggest challenges, however you want to
Yeah,
say it.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. I don't think there's a single definitive challenge. I think it's a bit of a convergence of issues, and they're all hitting us at the same time. I think we all know costs are rising. They're going up everywhere. It costs more money to turn the lights on in a restaurant, let alone buy the food. I think labor's obviously a challenge for us as well. And the shifting guest expectations as well, that's something that we're having to adjust to. I would say, from my perspective, the most challenging part is the labor side of things. BC is and has been typically heavily reliant on international and seasonal workers. And, you know, we've got some restrictions with immigrations and visas it's making it a lot harder to get people in through the door in the F&B space, which is challenging. And I think what we're seeing is a smaller, less stable talent pool to pull from, which is a little bit tricky. And I think when you layer on top of all of that, this shift in guest expectation around experiential dining, memorable dining, local dining, I'm not too sure the current F&B hotel model is working. And I think the ones that are successful or will be successful are the ones that rethink it a little bit and lean into some of these spaces.
Great. Yeah, I think we'll dive into that a bit more for sure. And Will?
So perspective-wise, on top of all the factual stuff that we're saying here, I always say, like, for hotels especially, we want to be putting a restaurant into a hotel, not a hotel restaurant necessarily. And there's nothing wrong with hotel restaurants at all. But then there's a stigmatization behind it where I'm already staying here. What's the point? I want to explore the city and see the Michelin-rated ones or the exciting ones or anything like that, when they're already a captured audience. And if we are just putting a little bit more emphasis on the creativity, emphasis on the fact that F&B is the driver, the energy hub of, and the excitement hub of a hotel, then we should be recognizing that moment and recognizing that responsibility to actually put full forth effort into creating F&B that's engaging.
Yeah, but that takes effort.
Takes
right?
effort.
It takes effort.
So taking effort means we have to do our part to convince and sell it to those who make the other decisions for us.
Right. Chris, you mentioned about changing guest experiences or guest expectations or the guest wants and needs. I'm going to jump in and touch on menus and how menus are changing. I want to start on beverage because even just out, we have a booth out there and a bunch of people came up and asked me about this topic. So I think it's a great topic, which is the non-alcoholic beverage trend and what's happening in that space. But I'm going to do a quick poll because we don't have any stats on it, and I've seen a bunch of stats. And, you know, it depends if a stat's done by Diageo Canada, it's very different than a stat's done by a non-alcoholic brand. But I want a show of hands, how many people are drinking less than they did 3 years ago, consciously? Okay, so that's big. Now, I want to ask another question and answer honestly. How many people last night drank as much as they typically would at a conference? Okay, interesting. So, okay, some people maybe didn't answer that honestly.
I'm not sure the level of honesty is there, David.
But so, from our perspective, and we consult with a ton of restaurants, ton of hotels, we're definitely seeing this trend in the F&B space, right? People are drinking less. And we've got to figure out how to combat that. But I would say from our experience, we're definitely, and my theory is people who are cutting back when they're at home, but when they go on vacation or business trips, it's no holds barred. I'm drinking like I always did. Some of you seem to agree with that. Some of you maybe still are cutting back. But anyway, I'm going to open it up, and maybe I'll start with you, Michael, because you guys distribute to restaurants, to hotels. You guys are really in tune with the alcoholic beverage space. What are you seeing, or what are your thoughts on that whole trend?
Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces in the market, and for sure that's one of them. And you can barely open up your news app on a daily basis without the CBC jumping on something out of UVic's Center for Harm Reduction. And it's a challenging time. I mean, economically, we're a bit of a luxury in craft beer. And also, I think we're dealing with a generation that hasn't learned how to socialize due to COVID. I think there's a lot of factors that, kids, the age that is coming into the drinking age was raised on Zoom, and they're not really going out. And we've got legalized cannabis. I mean, there's just so many factors at play. So to try and combat that rather than change it, we have a line of hop-infused sparkling waters we've introduced that are really quite flavorful, kind of like a bubbly, but with a lot more kind of dimension to it.
And sorry, were those introduced specifically because of this trend?
Absolutely, yeah. It's very difficult for a small brewery to play in the non-alcohol beer game because alcohol is a preservative and you lose shelf stability. So you rely on like really expensive technology like tunnel pasteurization. So it's just not something a brewery of our scale can play with.
Okay, yeah, great. And for you guys, I mean, are you seeing that trend in the hotels you work, that you oversee? And are you seeing that trend? And if so, what are you doing to sort it? Because, I think most of you know, but historically, beverage, both in hotel restaurants and in general restaurants, I mean, an alcoholic beverage program is money. Like, that's where the money is. So what are you seeing and what are you doing to fix it or change it?
Yeah, we are seeing it. And I think one thing, just to highlight, to add on to what you were saying was, I think it's just people are drinking with more intentionality. I think there's way more information out there about health and wellness, and I think the effects of alcohol on you. So I think people are making just different decisions around that, which is obviously contributing to, I guess, overall a reduction in alcohol drinking. For us, we've heavily lent into the non-alcoholics in terms of the cocktail menu. And we were talking about this earlier before we got here, it's just making sure that you apply exactly the same things you would apply to building a normal cocktail menu with all your alcohol, you would to the non-alcoholic menu. There's no reason why they can't have great ingredients, great balance, all of these things. And you can also charge the right premium for those drinks. And we're certainly seeing that in our restaurant in Tofino. People are choosing non-alcoholic cocktails off our menu a lot, and the volume has shifted. And the nice thing about that is, if you do it the right way, it does tie in with profitability. They can be profitable. You have to build them right. But it's something that we are leaning into heavily, yeah.
And Will, what about you? I mean, you've got a number of hotel F&B in your portfolio, are some pretty big F&B operations. Are you seeing that drop, and what are you guys doing?
In general, definitely we see it as well. I think piggybacking up what we're all saying here is that we want to approach non-alcoholic drinks like you're approaching food, because it should be just as important, just as creative, and just as captivating for your guest in general. So I think, yes, it's there, but at the same time, like you said earlier too, we're in hotels. People are enjoying themselves and finding reasons to sneak in a drink here or there. But it's our job to captivate them, to want to make sure that they're having the best time they can while enjoying the way they want to, and that's through non-alcoholic drinks, alcoholic drinks, and the food. It needs to be one ecosystem.
I think, and I'll just weigh in as well from personal experience. I think, and we'll talk about guest experience in F&B and how important it is, but guest experience and delivering a value proposition for the guest is critical. You guys know and live and breathe it in hotels, but we live and breathe it in F&B as well. And my wife is a great example, because she, for certain reasons, she doesn't drink at all. And she will pay whatever you want for an awesome non-alcoholic cocktail. And if you don't have it, she's going to get, $3 soda water or even just tap water. But if you have a great non-alcoholic cocktail program, she'll pay $20. And if it's phenomenal, she'll leave feeling great, like the value proposition was there and she got a great guest experience. So I think, personally, I think this whole trend is not going away. I mean, there's not a lot healthy about drinking. I don't think we're gonna convince people down the road that it's healthy and it'll go way back up. So I think what's happening and what you guys are talking about is that the approach has to be, we're committed to non-alcoholic beverage. We're committed to doing a great non-alcoholic program. And if we can do that and commit to it, there's money to be made in it. But if we don't, we're going to not have guest experience and our profit margins are going to be horrible. That makes kind of sum it up. Yeah. I want to jump on the food side. Because obviously food, I mean, beverage is beverage, but food is also a huge part of what you're offering in a restaurant or whatever food and beverage outlet you have. What are the food trends that you guys are seeing? What are the things that you're doing in food to kind of, I don't know, maybe get more guest engagement, improve guest experience, or improve efficiencies? Like what's happening on the food side?
I mean, food's so subjective, and food means something to everybody else. I think when we're traveling, especially when we're talking about hotels, then you want to be authentic to place, and you want to be able to capture the culture, the people, the environment, while still being your own creative entity. I think some things that obviously we like to do is simplify the menus a little bit more, curate them, because if something's on the menu, people will order it. You don't have to have 50 things. You can have 15 things, 12 things. And if it's there, there's no real choice. So if we have that social responsibility, if we have that creative mindset behind how we optimize our menus, not just based on how attractive it is food-wise, but also how it fits with food costs, how you can cross-utilize it within different outlets, yet still appearing and being completely different. So it's F&B is creativity, and utilizing that creativity to create diversity within the food.
I've got some feedback or comment on that, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to hold off on that.
I think the only thing I would add to that is you want to make it easy for the guest. So kind of what Will alluded to there is, you know, a large unfocused menu is a tricky thing for anyone to navigate. And I think, you know, guests nowadays are very price sensitive as well to value. So I think they see all these things when they walk into a restaurant, they look at a menu and they know if a story is being told through that menu. They know if that menu is attached to the local cuisine, what's going on, all of these things. So I think that's really important to simplify menus like that. And what Will touched on there is it's also really smart profitability wise. I'm sure we'll get into this, but the amount of operators that still don't do some of the basics right around food cost of sale and pricing and menu engineering and some of these things, and you have to get it right because it is traditionally a low margin business, but it can be profitable. So you really have to dial in some of the basics.
Well, and so I'm going to come back to that in a second as well, but I want to ask about on the food menu side as well. How much are you guys have menus changed, or are you changing menus to cater to all of the dietary needs? You know, we've got vegetarian, we've got vegan, we've got gluten-free, we've got all kinds of things. Is that an important part of what you're doing, or do you guys kind of stay away from it? Or?
No, personally, like you have to, we're in the hotel industry. Everyone matters, and everyone has a diet, and everyone has a need, and everyone has how they want to enjoy food. Obviously, the menu is the menu, and we curate that based on what makes sense for the concept. And the concept needs to be strong first before anything else, because people walking into a restaurant, they should know what they're getting. They should know what type of cuisine or what journey they're going to go on. And if they're going to expect fried rice on an Italian menu or something, then it's probably not going to happen. So I think that, but also being in the hotel space, like, you say yes to everything. If someone wants something, we can do it. But we want to encourage people to order and choose the journey within the concept that we have created.
Yeah, the short answer is you have to. You know, there's so many different things going on with diet, etc. You have to be able to cater to everybody. It can make it tricky. I mean, without getting too in the weeds, depending on what your kitchen setup is, you know, you may have to reconfigure that. to make sure that things aren't getting cross-contaminated, all of these different things. But it's a necessity, absolutely, yeah.
Interesting. Are you seeing anything on the whole beverage side in terms of what you guys are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. A few years ago, a buddy was diagnosed celiac, and that really, my background's biochemistry and microbiology, so it was a really interesting challenge for me. And so we introduced a line of beers called Breakthrough, gluten removed, and they taste like our regular real beers, and every batch is analyzed before we package. We ship across the province. We're introducing a sour. We did a stout in the winter. There's a lot of offerings out there that are regularly out of stock or taste horrible, and we've really leaned into that, and it's a nice growth channel for us.
That's interesting, and what you said, what you all said was interesting, but again, I'm talking a lot about my wife. That's kind of bad. Good thing she's not here. But so she's vegan, and I'm the complete opposite. I'm the biggest meat eater around, and how we got together, I'm not sure, but if 6 of us are going out, and often we'll travel, we go on trips with friends and whatever, we go, and if 6 of us are going out, they need to have a great vegan menu, or the 6 of us aren't eating there, even though 5 of us are meat eaters, because we need something that she's going to enjoy, right? So it's not just about the one person, it's about catering, and same thing, if you're celiac or whatever, I mean, it could be a large group, it could even be where you're booking a group of 12 or what have you, right? So I think that's incredibly important. And it doesn't take a lot of work, I don't think either, right? It takes some thought, it takes some creativity, but it's not, you're not moving mountains to have an approachable menu, right?
You know that dietary is out there, so you build your menus around understanding that you have that capability to create for them when that moment comes, or that it is on that menu already to cover that aspect of the dietary needs.
We've got some great questions coming up. I'm going to leave them until the end. We're definitely going to have time at the end to run through them. Because I got some thoughts I want to keep going on for sure. I want to talk a bit about guest experience and engagement in hotel restaurants. Because, for those of you who aren't that involved in food and beverage, like, I'm not going to lie, food and beverage will never make you as much money as your rooms do. Like, I get it. Rooms are like, the margins on rooms are phenomenal. But I think a lot of people overlook how good the margins are on food and beverage if you're already open. So if you have to have a restaurant in your hotel and it's operational and you've got a GM hired and you've got a chef hired and you've got, utilities and the space is allocated to it, I don't think people realize that roughly 50% of all incremental revenue goes to profit. Because when you add revenue to an existing restaurant, the only costs associated with that revenue are product cost at about 30%, some labor because you might have to staff a bit higher, but usually we see marginal labor at about 10 to 15%, and then credit card commissions, some linen costs, but roughly 50% of revenue goes to profit. So if I've got a restaurant in my hotel and I can add $1 million of revenue, I'm adding about 500 grand to my profitability, which is not as good as rooms, but it's big. So we're hugely about, we'll talk about cost control and stuff like that in a second, but the most important thing is, how do we get engagement from the guest? How do we get people to come in? How do we get a group of 6 to come and spend $400 in a restaurant instead of going somewhere else? Or to your point, Will, how do we get people from the outside to come to our restaurant who aren't even staying there? So I'd love to ask what you guys are doing or what you're seeing to help get that guest engagement and help get that revenue up there, because it's so critical.
I personally think we need to be relevant to the local community. Being relevant to them, if you're in a restaurant and it's packed, it doesn't mean it necessarily has to be with hotel guests. But if the hotel guests see that it's full or vibrant, then automatically they don't need to leave. They want to be part of it because it's where the locals are at. I also think, just like the last panel, like if we can celebrate what we're actually doing, share what we're actually doing, be involved with the community. Like example, another thing that I'm doing right now is changing all the menus for Richmond Hospital, separate to my current job, but it related because it's all related to F&B, is that there's a really powerful story there to not just profitability, writing the best menu possible, running a smooth operation, but how do we put forward social significance to build our names to be relevant in the way that we want to help the community around us. So, example, what I'm doing right now is we're changing menus, making them more Chinese focused because the demographic enrichment is Chinese. But if we understand that, then we can apply all that knowledge to what we're doing within hotels as well, because we can focus on understanding guests who typically might not come to us for whatever demographic they're coming from.
Very cool. Yeah, I'd like that, Chris.
Yeah, totally agree with all of that. I think the point Will just made around when guests walk in and they see locals in your F&B establishment, they want to be there. I think the community engagement piece is bang on as well. One of the things that I think we've done a really good job of, especially in Tofino, is our lobby space and how that lobby space translates into our F&B. It's a social hub. It's a place for people to hang out. It's a place for people to gather. They might come in with a laptop. They might not be staying. They're just hanging out. They're doing some work. They buy a coffee. They've stayed a couple more hours, and before you know it, they're having a beer at Après Surf in Tofino. And I think those experiences and leaning into that community side is really, really important. The other thing I would say, on just from my perspective, on the guest experience side, the amount of F&B venues I still walk into and the lights are like this. And people are not going to walk into your restaurant if you don't dial the atmosphere in. And it sounds pretty basic, but just sort the lighting out. Make sure the music's the right volume, create an atmosphere where people are going to want to walk into your venue and stay and buy drinks and eat. And I think that's a big opportunity. It's pretty sad to say it's an opportunity, but I think it is.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think one of the challenges has always been that hotels or restaurants, they're complicated beasts, right? They're not easy, and there's so many things that play into a restaurant that need to be done right to make it right. But again, it can be done. It's just you need that commitment. One of the things you touched on that we're doing a lot is how to get that F&B experience into the whole lobby space. We just started a new project we're developing a new concept for a hotel in Boston, and they've got this restaurant that's completely separated. It's next door to the lobby area, but they've got this giant lobby area that's a dead zone, and they've got a restaurant space that's completely separated, not engaging in a dead zone. And what we're doing is trying to create a concept that brings it all together, so you get an energy to it. Yeah. We're moving the bar from way in the back of the restaurant up into the lobby area. And I think that's important, how you can get that full engagement, because it's all part of the hotel experience, right? And just to dive a bit further, are there any specific things that you guys are doing to try and get the hotel guests to spend more of their F&B dollars in your space, or trying to get them engaged more specifically? And I'm not saying this is a good idea or whatever, but are you giving them discounts to eat in your space? Are you engaging them in some other way to kind of, because in a hotel, it's somewhat a restaurateur's dream, because you've got a bunch of people above you that need to eat and drink, which for a typical restaurant, it's like, oh my God, this is fantastic. So what are you doing to get them engaged more?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because ultimately you still need to give them a reason to go. We do a couple of things. I'll keep using Tofino as the example, but we use our guest SMS service when people arrive to make sure everybody knows what is going on in the restaurant that week, if we have any programming, if we have any live music, if we have any events, if we have a wine tasting, for example. So we're just making sure we share the information with the guest, and making sure they know and they've got a reason to want to go in there, right? Aside from just having to eat.
I'll give you one example. Recently, within the last 4 weeks, I'm lucky enough to work with another chef who's gotten the space at the Fairmont Vancouver Airport. They've agreed to let us use the space for our fundraising purposes. So fundraising for Richmond Hospital Foundation and the Planetary Health Initiative. So focusing way less on carbon emission foods. That being said, we were given a lobby space that was just 2 couches, probably about 300 square feet. We created a concept that was very unique, especially meaningful to the airport. It was a retro Hong Kong street food thing. So when you walk in, you feel like you've traveled to Hong Kong before you even got to Hong Kong, for instance. And so what the fear was before was like, it'll just cannibalize all the hotel guests staying at the airport. What we realized and what resulted from it actually was about 80 to 90% is locals, because it's activating a space in a premier location, but that was completely underutilized and generating profits for it that never existed before.
And if I could ask, without diving into too much, and you giving away all your secrets in that, did you engage how did you get the local engagement? Was it through marketing, or was it because of where you were, or?
It's social media. Yeah. It's letting the locals and the influencers and the media know what you're doing. And if it's purposeful and meaningful, again, nothing has to be always about that. But this one was a clear example of how that could really translate, because it's a feel-good story while you get to go to a place you never would imagine, and then being transported to another location when it's just temporary.
Awesome. I think I'm going to jump into some questions just because I want to definitely get to these, and we don't have a ton of time left, and there's some great questions. First question, and yeah, now, see, this is right in between my zone here. Have you seen a change or expect changes with more people taking Ozempic-like products? Great question. Because I was on it was a discussion panel, and this was one of the topics was, what is this going to do to the F&B space? And there was real concern around it. So, and I've got my thoughts, but I'd love to open it up to you guys. Any thoughts on what's going to happen with, and I'm not an expert in this space, but it used to be that you had to take a shot, right, for that? But now they're doing it in pill form, which makes it really easy for people to use it. Any thoughts on what that's doing to the F&B space?
I haven't encountered it at all.
Fair?
Yeah, I don't have a ton to offer here, only anecdotal, personal stuff. I've got some friends, and I'm assuming this question is leaning towards, eating less food, etc. I've seen a little bit of that, but honestly, not too much. So I think whatever you've experienced.
I don't have a ton of thoughts, but I was in this meeting or this think tank with a large food and beverage supplying company and one of their senior execs, and there was real concern because if people across the board eat 20% less, that's a big hit, whether it's to just general eating, but to F&B. I mean, a 20% hit in food and beverage in food is a massive hit. So the person I was in this meeting with that was a food distributor was very concerned. That was about 6 months ago. I'm not sure from there. My thoughts are definitely should be concerning. And I think it's great, I think a lot could be done for all of society to be healthier, which probably means eating less. But the unfortunate thing is if everybody eats healthier and eats a bit less, that's going to be a bad thing for the restaurant spend in general, or at least for the French fry companies. But anyway, let me look at the next question here. How do you incorporate your food and beverage offerings and need for room service and having the same quality in both areas? Great, because we've seen a lot of changes in how room service is approached. We've done some interesting things with room service. I'd love to know what you guys are doing. Yeah.
I mean, every hotel is different and every need's different. If it's a 5-star to a 2-star, some places barely have IRD in general, in-room dining. But it's a huge part depending what type of hotel you're at. Because also when you're surrounded by, if you're in Vancouver or you're in a remote place, you don't always have those options. So it's essential service regardless for a hotel. Now, the trends will change for each location. And what I think about it is you can also find creative ways to encourage guests to find a really beautiful market that you've created, to go pick up food from there instead. If it's right beside the elevator, they can just pick it up and go to the room. You save on labor, you save on space, especially because any traditional in-room dining will be carts upon carts and hot boxes taking up a massive amount of real estate.
Right, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, we don't necessarily have room service, but I think one thing we do really well, especially sort of the breakfast to lunch period, is grab and go options. Typically for those two dining periods, people want convenience and quickness, and then it's okay. So how can you elevate those options? How can you bring those options up a little bit to make them more substantial? So I think that's something that we've definitely lent into, to the point where we actually questioned our lunch service in the restaurant versus the options we had in our cafe and what was actually working. So,
Right.
yeah,
It's interesting because in hospitality and hotels, some hotels are great at this. Most hotels are great at this, but they lose it on the food and beverage. We talk about it in restaurants all the time, but we're all about how do we deliver 11 out of 10 guest experience? How do we elevate guest experience and make sure it's out of this world? And that's what hotels should be doing. It's what food and beverage should be doing. I got another great example. I was in, there's a hotel in Montreal that my wife and I have been staying at for 25 years, a boutique hotel. And I can't tell you how much money we spent in this hotel. But the reason why we spend it is because every time we go, it is through the roof hospitality. And so I think with room service, I think whatever your approach is, whether you want to do traditional room service, whether you want to pivot to a grab and go option, whether you want to do an in-between, whatever it is, I think with everything you do in food and beverage, and you should be doing it with your hotel anyway, but how do we knock it out of the park? Because knocking it out of the park, most people think that it's labor related, but it's not. My VP of Concept Development always talks about skill versus effort. And knocking it out of the park for the guest and delivering an 11 out of 10 guest experience is 95% effort and 5% cost or skill. And it's how do we get that effort? How do we do something that's going to be phenomenal? And so I think that's a big opportunity. Certainly, we've worked with a number of hotels where we've pivoted room service away from traditional room service into a either grab and go type option, simply because we didn't feel we could execute the room service at the level that needed to be in order for it to be a wow, but we could execute something else at a phenomenal level. So, so I think always having that as a focus is an important part. What sustainability initiatives have moved beyond good intention into real operational change in your food and beverage program, and have they helped or challenged food cost targets? Will?
I'll answer that one quickly. A really good example is when we turned the Fairmont Pacific Rim into a 100% ocean-wise facility. So we started with the Raw Bar, which was a sushi concept, and it was the first 100% ocean-wise sushi concept in all of Canada about 12 years ago. That obviously sparked a lifelong mission for myself, but also for a huge amount of the team. And so I think that these things translate. We're finding ways to be challenging ourselves to use local species that don't seem like a lot that you have to work with. But as you keep exploring and as you keep sort of learning from the producers and the fishermen and from even the aquaculturalists, you're going to start realizing that there's a lot more opportunity out there. And so that one opened up our eyes, and at first maybe interestingly received because it wasn't traditional sushi, but what it turned into was a trend for the rest of the city to follow.
Cool. Chris?
Yeah, maybe just a quick one. Again, out in Tofino, we used to do some really fun group foraging in the forest, which was a big guest experience point for us. And that's kind of manifested itself now to we've got 2 greenhouses, all the herbs, all the microgreens, all the good stuff going straight into the restaurant. So just a small, quick one, but it's been amazing for us. And not just the guests love it, but our team love it. And they love that we do that. And they love getting involved.
Very cool. Yeah, that's very neat. Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, on our side, we really care about food security, and we work with a lot of local providers. We're on the Saanich Peninsula, so we're surrounded by a lot of those small boutique farms from like the Plot Market Gardens and microgreens. Our spent grain goes to Mitchell Farms, their beef program. We buy back beef. We're the only independent company they'll sell to other than their own farm market. So that's really cool. And we also use Saanich Peninsula grown barley in about half of our beers. And so supporting local is really core to our industry, and we try and live it.
That's awesome. And I think one of the things that we see so much is people doing great stuff like that, but not including it as part of their story. Like, to me, if you're doing that, if all the things you're doing, that's part of your brand, that's part of why people want to eat there, that should be part of your story. And we've come across so many, not so much hotels, but restaurant operations that have these great stories that they haven't told anyone, it's not part of their brand or their experience. And we're like, why is that not part of the story, right? I want to get to this question. We're really close on time, but this is a great question, and I could talk about this for about an hour and a half. So, what negatively impacting habit do you see in larger food and beverage operations, especially hotels, resorts with multiple outlets? I can kick it off if you want. I cannot tell you how many food and beverage operations have not costed their menus. They're running a food and beverage operation with no menus costed, no strategic pricing strategy, and on top of that, no fiscal control around how that menu gets implemented and product cost gets controlled. And I can tell you from fact, if a menu hasn't strategically engineered their menu and they haven't got proper tight fiscal controls and procedures in place, they're probably losing about 10% of their revenue. And I've got a phenomenal story. I won't get into it too much, but last night I was out on the town, went to a place, I won't say where, but classic story. I ordered an 8-ounce glass of wine. The wine I got was about a 14-ounce pour. It was.
Where was this place?
Not lying. No word of a lie. I took a picture of it and I sent it to my entire consulting team, and I'm like, look at my 8-ounce glass of wine. And it was about 8 ounces in the glass. And then they gave me the side, whatever it was, had about another 6-8 ounces. Like, it was unbelievable. But this happens all day long in restaurants. So anyway, this is the most shocking thing I constantly see in hotel food and beverage, in all food and beverage, but especially in hotels. You got to get your menus costed. You got to strategically price your menus, and then you have to have proper fiscal controls and processes. Anyway, that's my tidbit. You guys,
yeah,
what you got?
Just quickly to add on to that, I completely agree with you. Train your team. You know, make sure you put in the work in to train your teams and what the expectation is, and that's not just on the actual operational side, but also you know, all the experiential side of stuff, the storytelling, all side of it. I think there is a lack of good training for F&B folks out there, and ultimately the buck stops with us as leaders to make sure our teams are out there doing things the right way. So it's just an important point, I think, to make.
I wouldn't condone this, but you should have ordered a steak too.
Yeah, I should have got the 12-ounce ribeye. That would have been awesome.
20-ounce tomahawk. Yeah, I think what it comes down to also is just making sure that the leaders, the chefs, anyone in management is engaged, is inspired, engaged, and into it, because everyone's always learning, and all the cooks are just trying their best to do their job. But if there's no oversight to it while allowing them to learn and grow, then there's going to be things missed. 8-ounce pour, 12-ounce steak. It could be anything. Michael,
anything you guys see from your involvement?
I mean, it just really echoes that training and reproducibility and consistency. It's like you're talking about your boutique hotel. You're going to go until you don't, until you have that poor experience, and it's so hard to get that through to new team members that, you know, this exists beyond your tenure here, and it existed prior to your tenure here, and we're dealing with people that in our industry want that consistency and that amazing experience every time.
Awesome. Well, look, I got 8 seconds left. So anyway, I want to thank the panel. You guys have been awesome, and I've been so excited to chat with you. Big round of applause for these guys, please. And yeah, I hope to see you throughout the day. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to talk food and beverage, because we, as you can tell, love it, right? So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.